Right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I want to introduce to you Michael Romano from Mandeville, Louisiana, and he's got a presentation for us on calendar. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and here it is. Michael?
Thank you, Jackson. It's good to have y'all here. When I was doing some studies on the moon calendars and different calendars, I started taking notes on the day and the year, and this is the presentation that came out of that. We just started breaking it down and basically took a closer look at the day and the year and the patterns of creation week. So first we start off with the verbiage in Bereshit, chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, and look at how it's worded and what the Hebrew actually says. Yom Echad means one day. It doesn't mean the first day. So let's see how that plays out. We kind of get an idea of what's going on here with let there be light. In the text above right here, we have the Hebrew, and in yellow, Yihei Or, let there be light. There's a distinction put between, a separation, a distinction. So you got your light, your darkness, setting up what was going on that first day. So you got your Yom is day, your Lila is night. There's a distinction between them. And so where it says Yihei Or, they Yihei Or, and there was light, the same form is used where evening and morning come. They Yihei, and there was evening and there was morning. So the pattern of the day is established right there. There was work, then there was an evening, then there was a morning, one day. So it sets the pattern. What you get in translation is a different wording that makes these things confusing. So when you're looking at a cycle, another way to describe a cycle is a circle. And in a circle, the ending is the beginning. So if you kind of look at how the day goes, you have your morning, you have the daylight, followed by an evening, darkness, and then followed by a morning. So if there was an evening, then there was a morning, making one day that follows the cycle. And since this is the end is the beginning, the ending of the day is also the beginning of the day, which the text says is at morning. So we're seeing that the day begins at the morning instead of at the night.
So you're saying that the day then is a 24-hour day from morning to morning?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and now that's a different breakdown on Yom, day versus night. And just to complete the cycle, to get you back to the next morning, you have to have a nighttime. Now, whether Yom covers nighttime also, that's a debate that's not covered here. The cycle is what we're looking at, and you have Yom and Lila, because you can't have a day without a night, because then you can't have a night without a day, and they follow each other. You'll never have 2 days consecutive without having a night. So we're just looking at the cycle.
All right. So you're saying that actually the night separates the days.
Yes, if you will, and
All
the
right.
days separate the night. So either way, but there has to be a starting point somewhere. It's kind of like a racetrack. You have a start-finish line. Where you start is where you finish. So even in the text, it's saying the last thing that happened was a morning, so that's your ending point. Naturally, that is your beginning point also, because the next day will start at that ending point, which is the morning. So when you look at the Hebrew, the light versus darkness, because you'll hear the argument, there was darkness and then there was light, so the day starts at evening. Well, that's not exactly how that plays out. You look at or, and you have an aleph, a resh, a wa, and a resh. Now, the aleph and the resh are both leading authority, what is first. So even the text is, the word is telling you it is first in this sequence, versus choshek, which is darkness, and there is no indication of being first, even in the picture letters, if you will, in the picture form. So the light, even in its spelling, is telling you it's first. The creator set it up that way so there would be no mistake there. He could have called or anything, but these are the letters he chose, and those are directly pointing at leadership and leading. So essentially, an evening and a morning only make a night, and this is where your English translation comes into question. And there was evening and there was morning only describes the period of time from the evening until the morning or nighttime, and that's the last part of the day, because most people's King James version reads, and then there was evening and morning one day. That an evening to a morning only describes nighttime. So even the verbiage doesn't make a whole lot of sense in English, and people are wrapped up on that translation and they can't get away from it. What it actually says is, and there was an evening, there was a morning, that makes one day, one complete cycle. So the day begins at morning, it's followed by an evening, there's nighttime, and that is followed by a morning. And this can be witnessed every day. The same cycle happens every time without question. Your morning and your evenings are the distinctions between the two. So even your creation day is still intact, where a distinction is put between the dark and the light, and that's your evening and your morning time, with your sunrise and your sunsets. So you get into the actual verbiage. The word achad is used, which means one, as in the numeral one, to refer to first. The Hebrew words are Roshan, Roshini, Reshit, Tekela. All of these are referring to first. So what they're saying in that first line, in that line, Genesis 1:5, is one day, not first day. And that gets translated as first day. Yom Echad means one day. It's not expressing a first day, but one day or one cycle. This is one beginning to end, complete unit. And then the rest of the days during creation week are listed as second, third through seventh, which is then your counting. So again, this is where you get your days of the week in Hebrew, but notice the first day. It's Yom Rishon, first day, not Yom Echad, which means one day. Then you have Yom Sheni, Yom Shishi, Yom Yere'i, Hamishi, so on and so forth, through Yom Shevi'i. So again, your KJV version is not giving you the right verbiage.
Surprise, surprise. One question I have, I see in literal translations, a lot of times it says day one.
Correct.
Day two, then correct. Day three.
And that's just
is that good?
Another confusion, because when you have one day and then a second, third, fourth, it does set up a pattern and then a repeating pattern. And that will steer you away from realizing that the day also starts at the morning too, because they confuse that whole issue right there. So this is just one day versus first day, and how the Hebrew would express that. Yom Rishon versus Yom Echad. And again, one day is showing you a pattern, and first day is putting it into a a list context. So you establish your day, you kind of get an idea what's going on there, starts at the morning, cycles through. Now the year follows a very similar pattern. Morning is essentially spring at the equinox. So your year begins at the morning, at the spring equinox. And the sun rises from there through the summer and then sets after the fall equinox into the winter, where it's at its lowest point. Winter would be the nighttime. So again, the day and year are just a micro and a macrocosm of what's going on. And the calendar actually breaks that down into seasons. So when you start your count right here at the Tekufat Hashanah, return of the year, you're going to have 3 months of spring, 3 months of summer, 3 months of fall, 3 months of winter. There's 91 days per season. That's 13 Shabbats, 13 groups of 7, 13 weeks, if you will. And you'll notice how the first month and the 7th month are essentially offset directly across from each other in this cycle. So your first month is a mirror of your 7th month is a mirror of your first month. And it keeps things in order like that. Essentially, when you divide the year in half from equinox to equinox, you have 26 Shabbats followed by 26 Shabbats. 52 Shabbats every year. And 26 is the gematria number of Yahuwah. So he's built his gematria number into this calendar also. After 6 months, you start over. The 7th month is extremely similar to the first, and you do the whole thing again. And it is about counting. Right at the beginning, you have your first month where you're told to put up your lamb on the 10th day. You have the 14th, the 15th, so on and so forth, again, and counting through Shavuot. And then in the 7th month, you're going to get into certain days. You do certain things. All through the summer, there's nothing. All through the winter, there's nothing. So the spring and fall are where everything happens. So that's how the year lays out. When
you said 364 days?
Correct.
91 days per quarter?
That's correct.
Okay. Where do you get that information?
You have, well, this is from the Qumran calendar scrolls. Verify this.
True.
We were doing these studies, and the way the Ruach HaKodesh revealed the information was more or less backwards. We had to look for every little bitty thing until the very end when everything was revealed, with the likes of Robert Eisenman and Rachel Elior and their information, Sherry Gamble in Number My Days. The calendar scrolls have the year set up just like this. The priestly orders were started on a Wednesday in the spring at the equinox and follow the 3 months per season, with the changeover day being the 91st day. And that's your changeover between spring and summer, summer and fall, fall and winter. It's a day that is neither fall or winter, it's both. So it doesn't fall into either one. And those 4 days are in between each of the seasons. So you come out with 364. And oddly enough, the equinox occurs after 364 days every year without fail.
Well, that's a good point to explain here, because we're always trying to make up for that day plus a little more. And a lot of people who don't understand the calendar are going to ask, well, what do we do with that? Do we have to reconcile the Enochian or Old Priestly solar calendar with the sun calendar, or the one Gregorian calendar we use now?
Well, I wouldn't say so much as it would be a reconciliation. What happens is the day of the week will change, even though it is 364. And when it's kind of hard to explain, I do have a slide on that tries to help to explain that. But there are certain years where you're going to start the year on the following Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So that essentially makes up for a week's worth of time. Again, the details of which I don't have right here in front of me, but it is I guess an intercalation, if you will, but it's not like adding a leap month or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just a delay of the start, if you will. And that always keeps the calendar in sync. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
fade behind one day a year, and in 30 years you're behind a month. It never does that.
As long as your first day is hooked up with the equinox, you're saying, correct, you're going to be able to do 364 days. And at the end of 364 days, if for some reason it doesn't, you just wait till the next Wednesday starting date.
Yes,
and it automatically fixes itself.
Yes, your equinox is going to be within a week.
Yeah.
So after 364, you start looking for the equinox. It'll be within a day or two, or within 3 to 4 days, and then that's when you'll start on the following Wednesday.
But Michael, the folks on the moon calendar say this is so difficult when all they have to do is look up at the moon. I mean.
Well, that'll leave you short 10 days every year, just like Enoch tells you. And oddly enough, we were on a Zadokite calendar with folks that were on a moon calendar, and they were exactly 10 days off.
Yeah.
It's amazing how Scripture just plays out just like that. Because Enoch does warn of that. Don't chase the moon, because you're going to end up short. And that's exactly what happens. It's kind of interesting to have been on the moon calendars and followed them and studied them, not just kind of went along with. We tried to follow along and tried to get the whole gist of the situation. And having only been able to cite like 7 out of 12 moons just from my location makes that very difficult. It wasn't following the patterns, because these patterns are set and they don't change. The equinox is going to occur in 364 every time.
Every time.
And the moon is kind of just straying around. And it is Babylonian. I mean, that's beyond that. That was one reason why we studied this Zadokite calendar, is because we absolutely proved that the moon calendars are Babylonian. Therefore, they could not be correct, so there had to be something that was. And sure enough, well, your Qumran scrolls prove that. And when you go back to Scripture and start looking at it through this prism, you see that the day starts at the morning, and they are following this calendar. It clears up a lot of kind of quirky things that you'll notice as you're going through Scripture.
We were quite surprised that last Sukkot, Marcel and I went into her trailer and went through your PowerPoint presentation here. And at the time, we didn't know what kind of calendar you were going to present. But when we got through it, we saw that it was exactly what we were already doing.
Exactly.
And you're another individual that has come to this understanding by their own reconnaissance and their own study. Correct. Which we've seen so many people just coming together on this, but I don't want to delay your presentation.
No, but that is an excellent point, because when I was researching, it would have been easy just to go to, say, Robert Eisenman's site or just hit the meat, and it wasn't even available. It wouldn't even come up. For over a year, I never saw that stuff. I couldn't find anything anywhere. So it was piece by piece, line by line, just revelation after revelation, and then finally at the end, the big payoff. It was like all your work was worthwhile. There's several other guys out there on YouTube that the same thing happened at about the same time. So
Yes.
it does seem that there was a plan involved here. So it's very exciting, to say the least.
Seems also like some of the people that fought hardest against this calendar, with us anyway, have now come around to it. They can see it. And it's spelled out in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's Zadokite works. This old priestly calendar is spelled right out by the day in Miksat Mahasa HaTorah, MMT document from Cave 4. Anybody can read it.
Right.
But it's another thing to try to take something simple and interpret it simply, like you have. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, let's see what else we might even have here. This is kind of looking at how the winter can be compared to nighttime, the summer as daytime, the day and the year having a very similar cycle. And let's see, you have your turn of the year. This is a term when we were discussing Babylonian moon calendar versus Zadokite, seasonal calendar, whatever you want to call it, where the Tekufa wasn't even in their vocabulary. And it was like, well, hang on a second. I mean, the turn of the year has nothing to do with the moon. So it's telling you to have these festivals and do these feasts at the turn of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to have to do with the moon. That is completely a solar situation. And again, that's your fall equinox. So even the verbiage in the scripture is going to point to this. The Kuf in the Paleo Hebrew is a sun on the horizon.
Oh.
So there it is right in the word. And not only that, the Kuf, the Wa, and the Pei spell the word Kuf right in the word. So it's telling you to look at the sun on the horizon at the turn of the year or for the turn of the year. Due east is going to tell you when it is. So even the language, again, is going to point out the sun is involved, the horizon is involved, and that's where the Kuf is showing you this in the language. And that's the beautiful part about this language. You can pick it apart, and it's going to tell you what's going on.
I could see that that's spelled Tekufa, but you gave that term, I only heard that the first time from you the other day. Can you again just define that for us one more time before we go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Here it is.
The Tekufa is a turning. This is right out of Strong's, coming around a circuit of time or space, a turning, a circuit. So again, you have your circular circuit, and there are turns, which your spring equinox, your fall equinox, or those turns, and your midway points are the solstices for winter and summer. So your turns are at the equinoxes, and your halfway points are the solstices. And that's exactly how the year lays out.
Okay.
So again, at the turn of the year. So that's why you have a spring festival season and a fall festival season right there. Those are the turns.
Okay, suppose I wanted to find out when that turn is. I mean, what would I do? Look on the internet or call some rabbi up? How is it that I can determine that by myself?
Well, the most effective way that I've seen lately is using the sundials. Now, we don't have one here. We have friends in different parts of the country, and actually different parts of the world, that have the sundials set up so that they will have the crossing from winter to spring shown on their sundials, and that's extremely accurate. Personally, I was using Stellarium, which is the software for the stars and whatnot. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a Google Earth for stars, I guess.
Yeah.
And it shows all the movements, and I tested it versus the sundials, and they all corresponded. So I was backing them up, they were backing me up, and the turn was all at the same time, same day, at the equinox in the spring and at the fall. So that's fascinating.
I have a picture of one right here, which, well, I can't show it, but this one is somebody put one in their backyard and showed it to me, sent me this picture. It almost looks like a bowl on a stand, and in the middle of the bowl is a kind of a cross, the crossing diagonally of two lines, like a cross. Is that one you're talking about?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that would actually, it's a bowl shape because of the dome that is over the earth. That is the rakia.
Oh.
And that's how the shadow works in the bowl. That's an excellent way of looking at it.
The dome over the earth?
Correct.
All right. Well, you notice I didn't go any farther with that at this time. I guess it's for a whole different time. Okay. Coming back.
So let's see what else we have here. The Shemesh, that's an interesting Hebrew word for the sun. And Shamash, same spelling, different pronunciation, means to serve. So you can safely assume that the sun is a servant. It's the same word, Shemesh and Shamash. And that faithful servant hits those marks at the equinoxes every time. And your sunrise and sunset every time, never misses a mark.
I noticed that the ninth candle on the Hanukkah is called the Shamash as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we do not do the Hanukkah, but that is correct. The center of the menorah is also referred to as a Shamash. That is the one that never goes out. And as they cycle through them, and the center candle always stays lit. Because it does, all the others feed off of it.
Okay, could you actually take that middle candle and light the other ones with it? Because I've seen that done.
That I don't know.
Okay.
But in this research, I don't have a slide on this. There was you like to read what the rabbis have to say about this, right, all throughout history. And there has been an argument about the menorah being used as a timepiece. There was argument as to where it was in location inside the sanctuary, if you will, and then how it was functioned. And there is an actual argument amongst the rabbis that it was used as a timepiece. Now, if you look at this, these are the positions of the sun throughout the year, and it takes up the shape of a menorah. Your sun at the equinox is right in the middle. Then through months 1, 2, and 3, it's going to move to the left, then come back. These exact 3 positions again. Go through your fall and winter, 3 more positions to the south, 3 more, the same 3 positions back to the north, and it does set up a menorah shape. So it's fascinating that if that menorah was positioned facing outward through the opening, you could follow the sunrises along the horizon, along the menorah. You may even light a candle, depending on what month it is. But I'm not sure if that's actually how it went. But you could do that, because you could mark the position of the sun via these candles on the menorah, and it would tell you where you are in the year.
That's interesting.
So, and essentially that's what you're going to see if you're following the first day of the second month. Your sun is now here in relation to the horizon and due east. And you just keep moving throughout the year. 30 days, another just hard count. You're going to follow the sun. And again, it's more of the counting than anything. If you need your reference, you're seeing it along the horizon. If you had property, you could put stones that mark these positions, so you can actually, and almost like a Stonehenge, if you will, you could follow the position of the sun throughout the year, so you always know what time it is. Here's your turn of the year again. Happens twice a year. Sunrise at due east.
Huh.
Then you continue. The sun moves in the opposite direction through the fall and winter. Lower on the horizon. Then it comes right back again. And you end up at the beginning of the year. So when you throw it into a calendar, which everybody, you got your boxes and your days. You got your days listed 1 through 7, and then your weeks following that. So if you walk it through, you've got your creation week. And on the 4th day, you'll see this is where time begins. Your sun, moon, and stars are created. There was no sun to keep time for the first 3 days. Time starts on the 4th day. That's why the year is going to start on the 4th day, your Wednesday. The year starts, so on and so forth. The 3-month pattern always restarts on a Wednesday. Each season, if you will, is going to start on a Wednesday.
So you're referring back to Genesis chapter 1 then?
Absolutely.
I see. Okay.
Absolutely. And that's
Sure.
why at first I was calling it the creation calendar, because if you go through the first 7 days and then rinse and repeat, well, you just do it again, and then you just keep doing it again and keep doing it again. You're going to come up with a 364-day calendar when you're done. So again, just walking it out, this is just showing your first sunrise, your second sunrise, your third sunrise. Just literally walk this out. On the 3rd day, there was no sunrise because there was no sun. So on the 4th day, you had your first sunrise. You had your first official countable day. So then you start your count. And that's where this is coming from.
Okay. Got it.
If you continue past the first Shabbat, if you will, well, then you just have the 5th day, 6th day, 7th day, and so on and so on. So it seems like after 7 days of creation, all of a sudden, there was no Monday morning. Well, there was a Sunday morning after that first Shabbat. So yeah, the time kept going, the sun kept rising, so the count kept going. And 30 days after, let there be light, that was the end of the first month. So you've got time beginning in the midst of the week. And then the second month follows the same cycle, 30 days.
So it seems to me that the major feasts are always going to start on like Wednesday.
Yes. Yes. And it follows. See, there's an expression, the Hebrew escapes me at the moment, but in English, it's the self-same day. And you'll see that a lot in Scripture. Well, what that is referring to is the exact day of the week. Like when the Israelites left Mitzrayim, when they left Egypt, they left on the self-same day that they arrived, which was on a Wednesday. You see what I'm saying? They arrived on a Wednesday, 400 years ago. They are leaving on the self-same day, which was the 15th of the month, on that Wednesday, and they were leaving. So the things happening on the same day of the week are very important. Doing research into vibration and just time in general, you can imagine if you do these feasts on the exact same day every year, what kind of impression in time and space that would make. So that's why these days are set up to hit exactly the same time every year without fail. If it's drifting, here and there, they're not hitting on the same day. So it's going to be a completely different energy if you're following me there.
How is it that Messianics can't see this? Why are they still on the moon calendar?
Well, I think you hit on it in a teaching you were doing earlier. It's a complacency, probably. It's a comfort zone where you really don't have to get off of anything that you're comfortable with here. If you just stick with what's given, never, make waves, things tend to, I don't know. I really can't explain it because
Yeah.
I just don't understand that mindset. No, I don't. When we're into testing everything, that was one of our battle cries early on. And we try and test everything. And when it's not up to snuff, it's time for us to change. It's not
True.
time for us to
Yes.
change what we're studying. So when it came to the calendar, it was just a natural that we just dig into it and see what's what. And not getting any good answers, we took it upon ourselves just to even try and show through scripture that a moon calendar, yes, is totally viable. And we could not do it. We couldn't even bend it to make it work. And actually, it was a blessing because at the same time, I kept noticing these other patterns. And sure enough, this is what was happening. If you follow, like after the Exodus, a lot of second day of third month things come up. Track those, and you'll see they're moving from Sunday to Friday, usually resting over a Shabbat, moving again at the beginning of the week on a Sunday, and moving until a Friday. And it just follows the Shabbat pattern for one, because he's not going to make them work over the Shabbat, and everything just lays out. Even the manna. Once you see this, the scriptures just open right up, and everything just starts making sense.
I know that word Kodesh that is often translated new moon just simply means new.
Yes.
It doesn't mean new moon, and the word moon isn't even in there. But I noticed even on some later Bible translations where even in the book of Jubilees they translate it new moon.
Wow.
Which is, that's a contradiction entirely in that book.
Yeah, and that is a hurdle, man, that is so hard to get over. I had a 30-page study on Kodesh, and it was not even received. Again, I think there was a complacency there where it's like, if we give up Kodesh, we're really going to have to move off of our square. Because that was one of the first things I looked at. And I said, now hang on a second. Your Rayach is moon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why does Kodesh have to be moon? And it doesn't. And you're right. And if you diligently study it out, I mean extensively and exhaustively, your conclusion is going to be that it is renewal.
Is that Kodesh teaching still available?
I think I still have it on my computer. I can.
Oh yeah, dig around, see if you can find it.
No problem there. Because again, that's part of what we're fighting too. Is like, well, okay, it makes sense, but I know all of this other stuff, and it contradicts. Well, yeah, Kodesh, you need to relook at that. And once you clear that up, even in context, in scripture, new moon just doesn't even fly as a definition for this, or as a term that can be used for this. And that throws a lot of people off. They just cannot get past it.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we might have here.
Okay.
I was kind of long-winded on some of this because this was supposed to be a very, very detailed presentation for a group, and it never took off. It never got off the ground. So there are patterns set up. It's there's a 3-month season, and it always starts on a Wednesday. The pattern repeats 4 times a year. Let's see. And this is, you asked about that earlier with your feasts and when they fall. So notice how our appointed times or Moedim fall in the midst of the week, and that's betok, in the midst. That's another word that has a lot of people thrown off also. In the midst of, that's a beautiful biblical term, and it really plays into this calendar because the 4th day of the week is in the middle of the week, and these festivals are going to start on the fourth day. Rosh Hashanah, always on the fourth day, first day of Matzah, Yom Torah, Sukkot, first day, and Shemini Atzeret. And those are the big feast days. And of course, you've got your other days that are coming in. Let's see what we have here on the 15th. And and the 15th is the midst of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you've got festivals starting in the midst of the week and the midst of the month. So he's putting these things in a very specific position. Sorry, my mouse is a little out of control here. So, 2 7-day feasts, the feasts of Matzah and Sukkot, both began in the midst of the week on the fourth day. Both have a Shabbat exactly in the middle or in the midst of the feast. And both feasts are in the midst of the month. And we talked about this earlier. On this calendar, no Moedim interferes with any other Moedim.
Mm-hmm.
Every seventh day Shabbat remains a seventh-day Shabbat. Every other feast day is on its own day, and nothing ever overlaps. So everything is always set apart. And I could never figure out how a Shabbat gets put aside for another set-apart day. There were a lot of things I couldn't reconcile on the other calendars that just didn't make sense. So on this calendar, you put it into your normal looking calendar format, and this is how it would look. First month lays out the Tuesday before the first day. You've got your 364th day. That is the 31st day of that month at the end of winter. First day of the year, midst of the week, that's going to be on your Wednesday. There's your 10th day, lamb is selected. Pesach at evening, 15th is matzah, 7 days thereof. Your first fruits is going to start on the 26th. And again, that is directly from the Qumran calendars. And oddly enough, the Gematria will play this out too. If you look at the 14th, that is a Yud and a Dalet, and that spells Yad. The 15th, which is the start of your next feast here, is Yah, a Yud and a Hey. So you have the hand of Yah on the 14th and 15th. The 26th is the Gematria number for Yahuwah, Yud, Hey, Wah, Hey. And that is first fruits. And that is just the way the Zadokite priest played it out in the calendar scroll at Qumran. So the 26th starts your count of the Omer. So this, again, puts you in line every year. There's no debating when first fruits is, so on and so forth. Abib, barley, the barley is Abib at this time. Again, if you read that verbiage, it's not telling you wait till the barley is Abib, then do these things. It's telling you the barley will be Abib because it's springtime and you're almost a full month into spring by the time you're taking that first little bit and waving those first fruits. So again, waiting for Abib, barley, and whatnot, it doesn't play out. Month 2, you just keep going. There's your Omer count. And the Omer count is laying out the Shemitah cycle, if you will, because you've got weeks of days. Those can be considered weeks of years. So the creator is actually having you practice the Shemitah and Yabel by doing the Omer count for 50 days. So that's something you won't forget. Well, unfortunately, that is what they forgot. And they did not keep the Shemitah, and that's why they were dispersed. So oddly enough. But that's an interesting count there. Keep going through your year. You go through the 7th month, and here's your feast again. You have an entire season of summer with not one Moedim, none at all. Same thing with winter, no Moedim whatsoever. They all fall right here, 1st month and 7th month, and that's all. So that'll bring us to, that is how to change over. Now, hopefully this will make sense. So after your 52 Shabbats, 52 weeks, you start looking for the equinox. It'll never happen before 52 Shabbats. It will always be after. So after you've counted 52 weeks, if the equinox occurs on the first, second, third, or fourth day of the week, the year starts on the fourth day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. And there's the rest of your month. Now, if the equinox occurs on the fifth or sixth day of the week, you would start your year the following Wednesday.
True.
Now, at some point, I will extrapolate this out and count it and find out how often these cycles happen. Other people already have, and it has to do with the moon cycles. So that is going to be my way of verifying it, but there is information out there as to when this happens on a consistent basis. There is a 3-year cycle where there's a full moon on the first day of the year. This, I think, is going to be part of that. But I am not exactly sure at the moment. So I'm going to do a physical count and see how many years in between the starting the year on the next Wednesday is going to be. And that's just going to take time to do.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, we have started the year on the Wednesday and not had to move forward till the next week. So this is our second year on this calendar, and we'll be following up, just walking it out. And once I get information on that, I'll pass that on.
Great.
But this is that is the intercalation, if you will. This is how
Right.
you'll never fall. It's like the equinox will never happen in winter. So if your year always starts after the equinox, you're never going to fall behind. And I think that, again, that's maybe some kind of mind game that's being played, because when you walk it out and count it, it just doesn't happen. I think it's just put into people's minds. It's
Mm-hmm.
strange how that happens, but
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is another way of looking at it. If there are not at least 2 sunrises north of due east before the Shabbat, you start the following week. It's like having your witnesses lined up, and if you don't have 2 witnesses before the rest day, but that's just another verbiage attached to that. The hard count is what makes it all work. Again, the menorah can be used as a timepiece and follow the months of the year. And we have some information on the resurrection week, if you want to look at that also.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at 3 days and 3 nights, and that's always a big deal to a lot of folks, and you get into all kinds of interesting translations of when things are, and like evening starts at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the evening, so on and so forth. Just looking at the verbiage, even the New Testament writings, the first century writings, show that the day starts at morning, and they were following this calendar. On the 14th, it was on a Tuesday, if you will, 3rd day of the week. Pesach's at evening. Yahshua is executed. The body is recovered at evening, which means as the sun is going down. So if your day started at evening, you would already be starting the first day of Matzah.
Yeah.
And that would not be happening. And this is where you get, well, evening starts at noon. And you're like, hang on a second. Evening is Arab, and Arab is not noon. It's about an hour to 45-minute period. So you can't even really stretch evening any further than, say, 5:30. And that's pushing it. So anyway, the body comes down, and it's already the next day. So you already have trouble if your day starts at evening. 3rd day of the week, Pesach. Let's see what else we got. Body was prepared and buried the night of the 14th, because at dawn was the Sabbath. The first day of unleavened bread is a Sabbath. Pesach is a preparation day for that Sabbath. That's why it is not a Sabbath. I mean, that plays out. So when evening was come, Joseph of Arimathea picks up the body. So he's not even getting the body until nighttime. He works through the night to get it prepared before the morning. So the 14th is not even considered as one of the 3 days or 3 nights. And this is where a lot of that gets tricky too. Because all of a sudden, well, you count that day because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, because he wasn't even in the ground yet. He wasn't in the tomb yet. And if he was, it was only briefly just before morning. So the first full day and the first full night would be the 4th day of the week. And the way he described it also was he would be in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights in that order. So the day was first and then a night. So he spent 1 day, 1 night. And then you just keep going with that. Simple counting. You're going to have your 5th day is going to be the second full day and night in the tomb. That's going to set up Friday as being a 3rd full day and full night. So the resurrection could not happen anytime before or after these days were completed, and that leaves a resurrection on Shabbat. And the New Testament writings also bear that out too. You had the Mary showing up as the sun was rising on the first day of the week. There's your sunrise starting the day, and Shabbat was over, and he was already gone.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised on Shabbat.
Yeah.
You cannot get it to work so that he is raised on Sunday. It just cannot happen.
Can't work.
Either way, either you're going to be a day short or you're going to be a day too long, and it never works out. But when challenged and say, hey, can you draw this out on paper? And this is why we had to do the pictures. It plays out, and it can only play out one way. It's very fascinating. And this is why these days don't change. Your Pesach is always on the 3rd day of the week. Matzah always on the 4th day of the week. So even, again, the verbiage will play that out. Try to scan through here. The 2 Miriams arrive at the tomb at dawn as the sun is rising on the 1st day of the week. Matthew 28:1 just lays it out just like that. In the end of the Shabbat, as it was beginning to dawn toward the 1st day of the week. I mean, the Shakespearean is a little confusing, but that is literally saying the Shabbat was ending at morning. The 1st day of the week was starting at morning. And the body was already gone. So even a careful look at how the Greek is worded will play out the day starts at morning also. And he was risen on the Shabbat. And I think that's all I have on that right there.
I just did a show on that too, and my conclusions are the same as yours, exactly. Going back to the Greek writings of the Gospels and seeing there are several important translation errors. Like on the dawn of the first day, doesn't say dawn there, it says drawing on, which is a different day altogether. Yeah. So yes, as Ben Casey used to say, I concur.
Yes, with the evidence does prove that out.
Who do you got there with you?
That is my little daughter, Eliana. Eliana Yitzhakah, that means Elohim has answered with laughter. And when she was born, she had this little giggle that sounded just like a lamb. And yes, she definitely lived up to her name there because Elohim did respond with laughter. Hi, Eliana.
She's transfixed. There you go.
That's my girl.
Do we have more?
That is all of the
okay
here.
Excellent. Well, I understand it a lot better now, especially some of the terms he threw out there. And I'm sure this will be appreciated by a number of people that are always like me. They have a difficulty with the charts and the graphs and all the numbers. This is straightforward. And thank you, Michael. It was wonderful. All right.
Thank you, Jackson.
You're welcome.